Later today, Conservatives will vote to exempt hospices, pharmacies and care providers from her national insurance rise. Will he, at the very least, support exempting these vulnerable services from his jobs tax?
But I understand the Leader of the Opposition is straight talking, so perhaps she can help us with this. Is she going to reverse the next increase? If not, what's the point? She didn't say they're going to reverse the national insurance rises. That's exactly what she wants all the benefits, but they can't say how they're going to pay them.
Nowhere in that report does it mention £22 billion. These damning words didn't come from Conservative opposition, but from Labour's own Chris Phelps. When a government's MPs start publicly contradicting their leader's central economic claim, you know something significant is unraveling. The financial justification for cutting winter fuel payments to pensioners and raising taxes on working families is collapsing under scrutiny. The question isn't just whether Starmer misled the public, it's how many more policy decisions were built on fabricated figures. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. When Rachel Reeves stood in Parliament and declared a £22 billion black hole left by the Conservatives, it became the foundational justification for every unpopular policy that followed. Tax increases? The black hole made them necessary. Benefit cuts? Unavoidable due to Conservative mismanagement. But as more scrutiny falls on this figure, what initially seemed like solid ground is rapidly turning to quicksand beneath the government's feet. For months, Keir Starmer and his ministers have repeated this £22 billion figure like a mantra, drilling it into public consciousness. It's been referenced in every major speech, every difficult interview, and every parliamentary debate where Labour's economic policies faced questioning. But now, as evidence emerges contradicting this narrative, we're witnessing what appears to be a calculated deception unraveling in real time. The most damning evidence comes from the Office for Budget Responsibility itself, the independent fiscal watchdog whose very purpose is to provide unbiased economic assessment.
Does the Prime Minister now regret raising taxes on business?
Yes. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the OBR will present their numbers. There'll be a spring statement next week.
Speaker, the only black hole is the one that he is digging. He's shown absolutely no regret, but everybody knows the Chancellor has made a mistake. That is why they're having an emergency budget.
She still hasn't. We've got record investment into this country. Interest rates have been cut, and she talks about national insurance. We had to fill the £22 billion black hole that they left.
Contrary to Labour's persistent claims, the OBR never mentioned a £22 billion gap in any of its reports. This isn't a matter of interpretation or partisan spin. It's simply factual. The watchdog that Labour claims to respect has directly contradicted their central economic narrative. What the OBR actually identified was a potential £9.5 billion shortfall, less than half the figure that's been used to justify painful economic measures. Even more telling is the crucial caveat attached to this assessment, where the OBR explicitly stated it is not possible to judge how much of that might actually have been realized. This nuanced economic reality bears little resemblance to the catastrophic fiscal emergency described by the Prime Minister and his Chancellor. So where did this mysterious £22 billion figure originate? A closer examination reveals something resembling creative accounting rather than economic analysis. Labour appears to have constructed this figure by cobbling together unrelated budget pressures, including £7 billion in spending that had been flagged before the March budget and £5.6 billion allocated for public sector pay. These disparate financial considerations were combined into a single, alarming figure that served a clear political purpose. The fallout is now spreading through Parliament, including within Labour's own ranks. Chris Phelps' confrontation with Starmer revealed the Prime Minister's discomfort when challenged directly about these discrepancies. Television viewers witnessed Starmer's usual confident demeanor visibly crack when asked to reconcile his claims with the OBR's actual assessment.
Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor claimed that her budget was a once-in-a-Parliament reset. So why are we having an emergency budget next week? Speaker, he knows why we're having an emergency budget, because since the last one, since the Chancellor delivered her budget in October, growth is down, borrowing is up, and she has destroyed business confidence.
Mr. Speaker, we have delivered record investment into this country, had 3 interest rates cut in a row, and wages are going up faster than prices, which is a massive cost of living boost. Massive 22 million black hole in the economy. They crashed the economy. We're rebuilding Britain.
Perhaps more concerning for the government, Phelp isn't alone. Other Labour MPs have privately and increasingly publicly expressed skepticism about the £22 billion figure. Internal Treasury documents have now surfaced, suggesting officials were aware of inconsistencies in the narrative surrounding this figure, but proceeded with it anyway. This raises profound questions about institutional integrity within one of Britain's most important financial bodies. Has the Treasury, traditionally seen as a guardian of fiscal honesty regardless of which party holds power, been compromised for political expediency? Former Conservative Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has dismissed the £22 billion claim as nonsense, which might be expected from the opposition. But when Labour backbenchers begin questioning the figure, it signals deeper troubles for Starmer's economic messaging. These MPs never expected to find themselves defending what increasingly appears to be an exercise in creative accounting rather than honest fiscal assessment. What's particularly troubling about this situation is how many painful policies have been justified by this questionable foundation. Pensioners losing winter fuel payments, workers facing steeper tax burdens, and public services enduring further cuts, all supposedly necessitated by a fiscal emergency that appears substantially exaggerated, if not manufactured entirely. The disparity between Labour's claims and the OBR's actual assessment isn't trivial. It's fundamental. A £9.5 billion challenge, with caveats about its realization, represents a manageable fiscal adjustment. A £22 billion black hole suggests catastrophic mismanagement requiring emergency measures. The difference isn't just in the numbers, it's in the justification they provide for political decisions affecting millions of people. The rebellion within Labour's own ranks is now becoming impossible for Starmer to ignore.
We've made provision for hospices, we've made provisions for charities, but we had to secure the economy.
Mr. Speaker, he hasn't made these provisions. He keeps talking about budget benefits. Unemployment is not a benefit. Businesses closing are not benefits.
But we can't get away with what we were doing in that budget, the root cause, which was fixing the economy they left so badly damaged.
His backbenchers aren't just questioning some abstract economic figure. They're raising fundamental concerns about the party's moral compass. These MPs are boldly stating that the proposed welfare cuts are not aligned with the values of the Labour Party and could permanently damage their relationship with voters who trusted them to be different from the Conservatives. What we're witnessing is more than just parliamentary squabbling. It's the unraveling of public trust in real time. While Starmer attempts to justify austerity measures with dubious economic claims, families across Britain face genuine hardships. The most disturbing aspect isn't just that figures were manipulated, but that this manufactured crisis is being used to justify policies that harm society's most vulnerable. As one Labour MP plainly stated, these cuts are morally wrong and not what Labour stands for. This internal divide reveals a fundamental question. If Starmer's economic foundation is built on fabrication, what does that tell us about his government's integrity? With each passing day, more Labour representatives are finding their voice, unwilling to sacrifice their principles on the altar of political expediency.